I flew into Heathrow and then out of city, and I flew city to Luxembourg and got a Luxembourg passport stamp out of the deal.
That's all. Oh, that's what I should do. Yeah, you've given me an idea because I want the Luxembourg stamp because Jess was asking.
That's the only way to get it. It's in or out, and you go to London. You got to do the London route.
And it's only city, I'm guessing. I bet they don't have a Heathrow flight.
I'm almost certain they don't.
It's episode 91 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. It's September 17th, 2015. Today I'm joined by Seth Miller. Hey, Seth.
How you doing?
And we got Foz Mahmood. Hey, Foz.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Oh, well, I think today we have a bunch of topics. We got a CEO out of one of the airlines. We got, maybe people have heard of this. And then we got Americans sending the wrong plane to the wrong place. And we got the death of a route and a possibility of a new route to a random destination, somewhat, and a new airplane factory opening up, and as well as a plane fire in Las Vegas, which I'm sure people have heard about as well. So,
I have to tell you, you mentioned the fire and the CEO news. One of our good friends was off hiking in the Inca Trail, like down in Peru, and came back and was out of touch for 6 days. It's like, came back and his post on Facebook was like, what the hell happened with you people?
Yeah. Fire in Las Vegas. And
sorry about that, Ray. We're working on it.
Let's talk about the CEO. So Jeff Smisek, the CEO of United, is no longer the CEO of United. Long live Smisek, I guess. I don't know. He was replaced by Munoz. I don't know how to pronounce it. Munoz, yeah.
We need our producer here for the appropriate pronunciation guide.
We do.
One of many reasons we need him around, but you know.
And he comes from CSX, the cargo company, the rail cargo company, which I found interesting. But
and also a longtime board member from Continental days.
Yes. And along with Smisek being out, there were two other executives that were fired. Fired, I think, is the right word. And this was all because of the scandal around the Columbia, South Carolina route to Newark. And so, what do you guys think? I mean, is this...
It was someone in government affairs, right?
Yep, the Port Authority?
No, I'm saying the two other executives.
Oh, yeah.
One of them was government affairs, and the other one, I forget what her job was. Was she like a...
Compliance? One was compliance, and one was government affairs.
Okay. So I think she was compliance, and he was government affairs, or vice versa then. But, yeah, clearly there's a compliance problem here. Someone did something stupid.
Yep.
Obviously, in the week or so since the news has come out, I think we've heard that they were actually planning this for some time. This wasn't like suddenly one day they made the decision, right? That's part of how they were able to introduce Munoz as the new CEO rather than as an interim CEO.
Yep.
Although the search obviously was not particularly public. A couple things like that. But I think ultimately I would be surprised if there's not more to the story.
Do you think this is kind of a mea culpa to the DOJ?
So I was thinking about this. Is it possible that Smisek used this to his advantage? Right, he's clearly on the verge of getting a lot of investor pressure for not performing on the par with Delta and even lagging behind American at this point, and just having an opportunity to get out and walk away under the skies.
Yeah, he did get a very nice...
Get out and walk away under threat of federal prosecution? I'm not sure that's so much getting away.
But we really don't know if there's any real threat to prosecution at this point.
I guess, that's fair.
Right, there's really no charges. There's nothing that's indicated that something's going on.
Other than he was right, the reason given was violation of company policies and code of ethics, which is not necessarily criminal.
Right. I mean, we don't know what that really means, and they could have just used that. It might have just been a mutual thing. Is I'll leave, and you guys can find someone else, and just give me a reason.
Do you think then that the golden parachute was too much? I mean, it's a sweet deal. It's like first class flight privileges for life. His parking spot at Newark, I guess, or in Chicago. I don't know where the parking spot is.
There's Chicago and Houston. Lifetime first class flights and $4 million, and he's still going to get paid his bonus at a prorated amount. I'd like to get that deal when I get fired.
I get fired every week. I mean, the payout is, I think, egregiously high, but I think his compensation in general was egregiously high, so it's hard.
Yeah. I just found the whole thing interesting. I mean, he kind of got a sweet deal, and I guess it all teeters on the fact of does he actually get prosecuted? Because you can't really use some of those things when you're in prison. But
actually, they get revoked if he's convicted.
Okay, so that's part of the deal.
There is a clause in the contract that says he's if he pleads guilty, or is convicted, that he loses a lot of that stuff. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the lifetime flight benefits and the parking space is actually just part of sort of the contract of being a CEO.
Well, didn't he also get the car?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I would imagine is also
standard boilerplate stuff. Yeah. I don't know. And it's interesting to see where this prosecution thing could go. It's interesting to see where the scandal goes, because it's kind of, to anyone that's on the outside, I think it's kind of obvious. Do you think it's obvious, Seth? That there was kind of some backhand, behind closed doors dealings on the hush hush?
I think that all evidence suggests there was definitely things that were less than normal going on. Right. The question is, at what point do you switch from being an idiot to doing something illegal?
Yeah. When does it become criminal?
Right. And one of the comments, I don't remember who we were talking with, if it was you guys or someone else I was talking to about this the other day, but was like, if you think about it, he was involved at Vincent and Elkins when the whole Enron deal went down, right?
Yep.
Or was maybe not at the very end, but he was certainly around there for some time. And after that is when he went to Continental. So he's seen things go badly. Either he had nothing to do with any of this and he's a scapegoat, which is certainly a possibility, but not one I necessarily buy into. Or he saw that and figured, now I've seen how people get screwed. I'm smart enough to do it better, and figured he'd play the game. Or he actually thought he was going to be able to do it better and got caught. Or, it's one of those, did he not learn, or did he think he learned too well kind of questions? And that alone is an interesting aspect of the sort of situation to me, but I don't know. I still think there's got to be more to it than just that route existing for a couple weeks or a couple years, whatever.
I personally feel that this is going to uncover, anyone who lives in the New York area or has experienced it, knows how corrupt the Port Authority is. And I think this is just going to unearth a whole slew of things, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see stuff with Delta and LaGuardia, and even JFK to some extent, and even American in some regards. I wouldn't be surprised if this unravels a whole other thing.
What kind of stuff at LaGuardia and JFK? What do you got your eye on?
Well, the slot, between the slot swap and the things that are going on with the terminals, and then with T4 with the expansion, the continued expansion, and Delta seems to be getting whatever they want.
Yeah, Delta's also paying all the construction costs.
Yeah, but anyone could offer to come in to pay for a lot of the construction costs, and they wouldn't be so cooperative. This is not an organization that's ever really cooperated with anybody.
Yeah, yes and no. I feel like, among other things, right, they don't own that terminal.
Well,
so obviously they have to approve it, but they don't own the terminal. It's owned by a Dutch company, I think, or a conglomerate.
Yeah, it's Schiphol.
Schiphol, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, right, JetBlue at the same time built an extension on the T5. So, are you going to throw them in there too as also people that are sketchy?
No, I don't think JetBlue. I think JetBlue's more on the up and up. I would not be surprised if Delta's had to do some backroom deals to get what they've gotten so far.
All right.
There's a lot of Delta hate from Foz lately.
Should I start loving them?
I don't know. I'm just giving you a hard time. Well, and so what do you guys think about the new CEO? We really don't know what his plan is. We've got very broad strokes about improving customer experience and reliability and improving relations with the employees. But other than that, we don't really know what Munoz's plan is for the airline and what his vision is, I guess. What do you guys think?
I would argue that while he has a lot of experience on the freight side, I don't know how much he can offer on the customer side.
Do you think that's a fresh thing, though? Do you think that's a good thing? He's new to it. Do you think learning on the job is maybe a plus?
It's a whole different set of problems, right, from a customer experience. Your shipment's delayed. That's a pretty finite thing and easy to deal with. You've got people scattered all over the place. That's a slightly different thing, and emotions tend to be much stronger.
True.
Right, customer service. The reality is the airlines are at this point a customer service business, and that's getting people from point A to point B as happy as they can. No one's ever going to be really happy, but you hear people rave about Delta, and it's not like Delta's service is that great. It's just their customer service has been a little better.
Yep. And
so managing people's expectations.
And to be fair, the planes actually go where they're supposed to go most of the time. Right. That's and I like if I read another story that suggests that United needs to fix its loyalty program, the food on board, or the livery, I might just kill someone.
Reliability is what I think I quoted to you, Seth.
Yeah. It's like reading some of this stuff makes me feel quite violent and more dumbfounded. Like, how can people think these are actually the things that matter?
Yeah.
But perhaps I subscribe a little much to the Doug Parker theory on liveries, which is, I just don't care. No one's ever bought a ticket based on that. Put whatever you want on the side of my planes, but stop talking about it. Basically his message to his employees shortly after the merger when there was discussion of deliveries.
Well, do you think? I mean, let's just talk before Smisek left. There was kind of this copycat mentality out of United to copy Delta. Do you think Munoz continues that, or do you think he's more innovative when it comes to things?
But I mean, I would argue, yes, there's definitely been some mimicking, but it's not full copycat. I mean, Mileage Plus hasn't been nearly as good as Sky Pesos.
True. That doesn't mean it's not coming.
How dare you defend the Mileage Plus program?
You shill.
I'm sorry, I meant Sky Pesos is so much better than Mileage Plus.
How dare you defend Sky Pesos?
Just give me my Diamond Club and I'll be happy.
There it is. There it is. A man who knows what he's talking about.
What do you think, Seth? I mean, do you think he's...
Part of me says, from a business perspective, I don't disagree with basically any of the decisions that Smisek made. I think that he did some very stupid things relating to employee relations, and I think he never quite got his head around how to fix the operational stuff and whitewashed it with all sorts of other platitudes and discussions and things. Some of the initial early cuts to meals and stuff like that may have gone a little too deep, but that was sort of necessary evil to figure out what the tipping point was to fix the company in a financial sense to, the level of service that people are willing to pay for. And I'd like to pretend that all of us are willing to pay for a little more and get better things. And somewhat ironic that I say that, having actually paid out of my own pocket to fly Mint a couple days ago, right, where I actually paid extra to fly business class, but it wasn't actually that much extra, and they have a way different cost basis. So, people are talking like, oh, Munoz is here, he's going to undo all the stuff Smisek did. No, don't expect that. Don't expect that the loyalty program is suddenly going to go back to the old way. Don't expect that we're going to get, blankets on all flights in coach or something silly like that, or free meals at mealtimes is not coming back, right? Munoz is going to keep an eye on the bottom line and keep working towards those same cuts the way Smisek was and the way the board expects that the company will move. The difference is, hopefully, he figures out how to do that while also making nice with the unions and figuring out how to get the planes moving on time, which is partly a maintenance issue, partly a union issue, I think.
Yep. I agree with that.
It's going to be hard, right? The worst time ever in the world to negotiate a union contract is when you're reporting massive profits.
Yep.
It's really hard to explain to a union why you don't want to give them a bigger chunk of the pie when you can't say, oh, well, we don't have any money, because they can look at your press release the same as that you just put out that says you made how many hundreds of millions of dollars you did, and that's going to be really hard to explain. Well, sure, but we're not going to give you all of that.
But do you think then that it's actually a bargaining chip for them, because the issues around the flight attendants union is seniority? Do you think you could put a topper on that and say we'll pay a bonus or whatever to go with this seniority list? Do you think you could quash some of that infighting that way?
How do you mean? Say like approve a new contract and get your shit together, and we'll give you a one-time $5,000. Don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you'd have a hard time selling that to the board and to the analysts, unfortunately. I don't know.
True. That. I'm just trying to think of, you need to get past the labor issue, and,
I mean, the question that I would ask, and I realize I know the actual answer, but are the unions really so short-sighted to not think that oil is not going to go back up? They're talking about negotiating multi-year contracts. And yeah, they're making profits, but a lot of those profits are tied to the price of oil at the moment.
Yeah. It's hard. I wonder sometimes, American pushed to not give flight attendants or any of their unions, I think, profit sharing necessarily. Right? I think that was one of those things. They didn't want the stock to be part of that, but management kept stock in there. And I think Parker's comment was something to the extent of, why don't we just give you more cash and keep it a more steady approach? And that's more realistic and more stable for you, right? You shouldn't be worried about your bonus so much as just having a livable wage to begin with, kind of theory.
Yep.
Which makes sense in some ways. The flip side is, if it's profit anyways, can you afford to give an extra 2% of the profits above some ridiculously high threshold just in case? I'd like to think so, but fortunately I don't have to deal with Wall Street auditing my books.
Oh.
I don't know. It's I don't fully understand the labor stuff. I feel like a lot of it's numbers, the pay, but I feel like a lot of it is also just other work rules and other things like that. Like a flight attendant, doesn't want to have a requirement to work so many hours to get what's considered full pay or something like that. And that's been a big challenge for the United integration.
Yeah, I mean, so hopefully, that's what Munoz does is, give a little bit of clarity here and a new perspective, and solves the labor issue, and then also does something with the on-time factor and the reliability. I think those are the two big issues and I think reliability is probably number one.
Yeah.
So, next up, American Airlines sent the wrong Airbus 321 to Honolulu. They have a non-ETOPS version of the plane, or an ETOPS version that doesn't have the range or the rating for Honolulu to, I think it was San Francisco, or was it LA?
LA.
Yeah, and so they have a version of the 321 that isn't certified to do that.
Yeah, that was a pretty big fuck up.
And what gets me about that one is that took a level of incompetence that I don't think I've ever witnessed before, because that had to get through the dispatcher.
Yep.
And the pilot.
Flight planning, dispatch, like the number of people, and heck, the guys doing pushback on the nose maybe did and maybe didn't, should or shouldn't know that they're supposed to see ETOPS because it's going to Hawaii, but like, so there's all sorts of people who potentially miss a massive safety issue there.
And wouldn't that be in part of the checklist or something in the cockpit as well?
You'd think so. Like, hey, is there a big yellow ETOPS sticker on this one? Then I don't think that's actually what the checklist says, but I'd like to think that it's something similar.
Well, there is an ETOPS rating inside the cockpit usually, so...
Yeah, I mean, there's supposed to be some indication that this plane is ETOPS, right? That everybody can see in various different positions.
Yep.
Right? But I mean, so without it, that potentially means fewer life rafts.
Yep.
Fewer other safety supplies, like all sorts of potential what's going on here. I don't know if it actually affects what's the, the engines and stuff like that. I mean, I think that there are rules about like the APU check, how often they check the APU for operational reliability and things like that, so it can restart an engine if it's lost during the trip. But
sometimes the engines are different because they have they can run longer on a single engine.
Yeah, so I mean, there's like, I don't know if it's just that they have a bunch of similar planes and some that don't have like the extra life rafts on board or whatever, or if it's actually other differences in the hardware. It'd be interesting to go back and check that at some point, but yeah, the number of people who had to screw up to miss this one is...
But what I liked was it took over a week for them to report it.
Well, did it take over a week for them to report it, or over a week for everybody else to notice?
No, the press release I said they just informed the FAA in like the last 2 days, or last few days, maybe the 13th, but it was...
See, that
first or something.
Something doesn't add up there, because it did happen right around the 1st. It was the end of August or the 1st of September. But they absolutely took it out of service and flew it home empty.
Yep.
So at that point, I don't know that you can ferry a non-ETOPS, even without passengers on it. I'm not sure you can ferry a non-ETOPS plane over the ocean without filing special permits with the FAA.
Well, they may have requested, I guess. I mean...
Right, but at which point they had notified the FAA, right?
True.
So I just question we only just notified the FAA. Maybe they filed additional information or formally, submitted this is the results of our investigation or something. But
so what wasn't clear to me was it just a plane that just wasn't ETOPS rated at all? Wow.
Typically, at least from what I've seen in the U.S. fleets, when you have an ETOPS rating, you have basically one. It's two.
Yeah.
And so, American and U.S. over the years have had overwater aircraft, which are typically used to go to the Caribbean, where you're never more than 60 or 90 miles from an airport, but you still need rafts because you're overwater most of the time.
Yep.
And then there's also ETOPS, which is even further, obviously extended, if you will, and have even more requirements in terms of systems and kit on board.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes me question, what was somebody thinking? I mean, how do you... I wonder if it was like a U.S. bird that they somehow flew.
No, because that wouldn't fly that route.
No?
They don't have the range. Right? Well, I guess the 321s might, but we have the tail number on it, I'm pretty sure somewhere. I think it's an
AA bird.
It's a AA bird, but...
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
It hurts my head.
I mean, it's amazing that someone can screw up so epically, and you have to wonder...
Let's be clear, it was a lot of people that screwed up that epically.
That's true. It is amazing that an organization can screw up so epically. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure they'll get a fine, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of fine they end up with.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if they get a smaller fine than Spirit's, I think got $100,000 for a runway tarmac violation, right? Having some people stuck on the runway sucks, but you didn't really fly them on a plane that wasn't qualified to go out over the ocean.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the FAA has these cute little signs to keep airlines from being mean to passengers, but there's a difference between being mean and legitimately putting life at risk. And the plane was maintained and whatever and was safe, but there's a reason you have ETOPS when you're flying over the water. That's just not cool.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if they had lost an engine somewhere over the Pacific? I mean, theoretically, if they weren't within range or they weren't in range for a single engine, they would have had to ditch it in the Pacific. And then what do you? I mean, it's tough to think about because it's the whole point of this is a fail-safe type thing. So
I'm gonna start looking for the ETOPS logo on my planes now.
Excuse me, Captain. I didn't see an ETOPS rating on the plane. Are we supposed to?
I wonder. I know American obviously has a split fleet. Do United and Delta on the planes on the types that they operate over water?
United does both. They're two different engines, so it's pretty obvious.
For which type?
The 75. That's the only.
Right. So it's the Legacy Continental planes are ETOPS. Although actually, aren't a couple of the Legacy United the PS planes also ETOPS capable?
Yes.
Some of them are, but they don't use them anymore. They haven't maintained those certifications.
Okay. Right. That's part of the interesting thing about this is like you can declare certain chunks of your fleet as ETOPS to the FAA, but then all of them are sort of maintained under that same ruling or same requirement. So like if you have some plane, like I think I was talking to someone at one point, like if you have a plane where the APU doesn't operate, even if it's on a domestic departure, they actually will take it out of service until they get the APU fixed because they need that to maintain their ETOPS. And if you dispatch with broken or limited APU too often on a plane that's ETOPS, part of the ETOPS fleet, even if it's not an ETOPS route, so to speak, you sort of lose your certification eventually.
Yeah, so on the United side, the old 75, the pre-merger United 75s, the non-PS, some of them were mixed.
Okay.
None of them PS ones, but all those are gone at this point.
Okay, so those are now flying FedEx.
Yeah, so we're waiting to be converted.
Yeah, I saw the other day.
Now, what I don't know is if they maintained the ETOPS certifications on the 738 SFPs.
I think they had to because they're using them still on. They go to Hawaii and they do some of the Caribbean and they do.
Caribbean's not ETOPS.
No, but I'm trying to think. I thought there was another route where they needed it.
Bermuda?
Might just no.
I mean, right? There's some. Obviously the Island Hopper, but that's different. That's not the SFP birds. I don't think. It's
because that sounds like 14 seats.
Yeah, you got the 753, where only half the flight I think is allowed to go to Hawaii. Right? Only part of it is the ATA.
Yeah, the ATA ones.
Those are ETOPS, right?
Right, because that's what they used to fly.
Right. The Continental ones aren't.
Right.
The whole thing is weird.
Yep. So and the passengers probably had no idea. So
nope.
Of course not.
Nope. Could you imagine being the pilot halfway across the Pacific realizing that?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you can get a copy of the ACARS traffic on that one.
Yeah.
He's sitting there going through his paperwork and goes, "Hey, Bill, did you realize this isn't an ETOPS bird?"
Oh man, are we in trouble? May as well go back and pop the bar cart now because it can't get any worse, right? Not suggesting that they started drinking and flying drunk.
One of my good friends who's a pilot. He's always like, you know what ETOPS means, right? I'm like, no. He goes, engines turn or people swim.
Yep.
Yep. Let's talk about a death of a route. So it came down today from SAS that the Houston-Stavanger flight that's operated by private air or on a private air aircraft is going away effective mid-October, like mid to late October.
Yep, the winter 2016 schedule.
Yep, and that plane will then be converted into a mixed business and coach configuration and will be used on Newark, Copenhagen, a second service between the two. It's interesting. I mean, the SAS did release a press release about it and was pretty blunt that they were like, we had these special relationships with our oil clients.
Can I read it for you directly? I happen to have the page up.
Yeah, please.
Quote, the oil route came out of creative and constructive product development between SAS and our core clients in the oil industry. We have done all we can to make it viable. However, we have had to accept that the downturn in the industry, unfortunately, is also impacting us, hence our decision to switch the aircraft to Copenhagen, New York, where the market offers far more potential right now, says Elvin Roald, who I imagine is some sort of executive, EVP commercial sales at SAS. So, yeah, but I love that they call it the oil route, not that we all didn't, but, they're basically saying straight up, this was supposed to be this great thing where we had all these corporate sales, and none of them are buying tickets anymore.
I would venture a guess that they sat down with some of their bigger clients, Shell and ExxonMobil, popped into my mind, and said, "Can you keep this going?"
Yeah.
And they all across the table just started laughing, or something. It's all deep water exploration off of the North Sea, and that's probably the least likely to get any investment anytime soon. So, that makes sense. Yeah. It's sad to see it go because I wanted to get that line.
Yeah, it's
not too late yet.
I know.
On the plus side, Stavanger to Copenhagen routes are upgauging from CR9s to 320s and 321s to increase capacity to help move passengers.
Yeah, but so what doesn't make sense to me about that is that now you have to double connect. You got to get to Copenhagen first.
Yeah.
to get this extra frequency.
So why wouldn't you just fly to Amsterdam or London or Frankfurt or Munich or
exactly anywhere else?
I don't know what others. Well, who all those serve Stavanger?
Most of those do. I mean,
I'm sure
the
London
old
and Amsterdam do. In Paris.
Yeah, the old route for Shell used to be Houston, Amsterdam, Stavanger. That was the bread and butter. So, it's kind of sad, but it actually talks to the times of kind of what the economy's facing when it comes to the oil business. So
yeah, I mean, we joke about the Delta dartboard all the time. This was clearly a bit of a dartboard route, right? There's one way to support it, but at least they're being blunt and saying we had a specific market in mind. That market collapsed.
Yep.
When did that flight come into being?
It's been a couple of years now, I think. Like maybe a year and a half, maybe 2. I'd have to go back and look, but I think we talked about it on one of the shows, so I could probably hunt it down with a little bit of
So it has a decent run.
Yeah.
It's not like Delta's JFK Buenos Aires, which never actually took off.
Or that hub in Africa?
Oh, yes. No, that one actually took off. That actually happened for a little bit.
Well, there were some, but not nearly the massive volume they originally intended.
Is this the Accra? Is this Accra, or where was this?
Was it Dakar, maybe?
Dakar and Accra were both. Dakar was going to be the scissor hub, I think, and then...
Yeah, Dakar was just because it was all 7.5s they were flying from Atlanta and JFK.
Oh, I actually remember the episode where we talked about that because I didn't even realize they had some of those 7.5 flights into Africa. And when I look at the map, I'm like, whoa.
The map had a whole bunch of them, but I feel like not all those routes actually launched. So
I think most of them did, but they just didn't last very long.
Okay.
And we were too. We didn't even notice that they went away, so we didn't talk about them. But speak of a dartboard, Emirates is talking about, or there's rumors flying that they want to fly Dubai, Mexico City, which after
350 miles longer than Panama.
Yes, and when you think about that, you're like, wait a second, how? And then you look at the Great Circle map, and you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Mexico City's really far west.
Yeah, it is, and
5 hours from New York, which
it's a heck of a flight.
The Emirates flight basically comes to past us. No, it would be.
So does Emirates really qualify as a dartboard? They don't cancel any of these routes.
No, they fly them right. They fly them until
Yeah, how often does Emirates cancel a route? Can't be that often.
I can't think of when they have canceled them. I mean, they haven't even canceled JFK Milan.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know they downgauged some stuff out of middle, Southeast Asia.
Okay, so for Emirates, what's a down gauge? Going from a 380 to a 330?
No, a 3 class to a 2 class.
Sure, but that's more capacity. That's more seats.
They upgauged it.
It's all relative, right?
I have to admit, I think this one, Panama kind of threw me off a little bit, but I think this one throws me off more because just looking at the stats on it, I think it's out of range of any of the fleet that Emirates has.
77L should do it.
The altitude, though, is what I'm thinking is the problem. At 7,300 feet above sea level, the maximum takeoff weight, I think, puts it too high. The maximum takeoff weight is too high for the lift factor of the 777.
Well, so how much cargo will they be pulling out?
Well, that's the question. Is are they planning on saying we're not going to take, we're going to limit it by a certain number of tons to fly the route? I mean, that's a possibility for sure.
August 2014 is when SAS started the route, so you guys know. So it'll run just over a year.
A year, okay. So it's shorter than I thought.
14 months, something.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I'm playing a role producer tonight, apparently. Not nearly as well.
So I either they're going to do that, Foz, they're going to limit the amount of cargo they carry, or they're going to add a tag-on flight somewhere.
See, Panama to me makes sense because it's a small airport. It's easy to connect. Mexico, I mean, the terminals are on opposite sides of the runway, so it's not an easy airport to connect at.
But when has that ever stopped Emirates?
Well, that's true, but I just wonder if they're targeting more of an O&D market.
What do you say? It's not as easy to connect. It's not as easy to connect to domestic Mexico flights.
Well, even if you're on 2 different international, because it depends on which carrier and where you end up.
Sure. So depending on if they can sign a partnership with one of them and use that same terminal, it may work.
Well, that was where I was going. So the question becomes, they're going to need to sign a partnership with. I mean, it has to be Aeromexico, right? Who else has much feed going into Mexico City at this point?
Viva Aeromexico, Viva Airbus,
or Volaris.
Volaris is probably the more likely one.
Yeah.
Didn't Delta? Yeah, Delta and Aeromexico have a joint venture.
Yeah, because they're in Sky King.
Well, but they have a joint venture beyond that. And I thought there was something even more significant than that. I thought there was some equity possibly, but maybe not. I mean, Delta bought like a little bit of all sorts of different airlines. I thought they were one of them, but maybe not.
I'm investing in Mexicana.
Just an antitrust immunity. All right.
There's also Interjet.
Yeah, but they don't fly much out of Mexico City. They're
true.
TLC.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, I could definitely see it being O&D, Foz. I mean, you're talking about the economy.
Onward to the whole rest of the world. I get it, but
and it's Emirates too. So
sure.
And Mexico's economy is doing okay. It's a large population. I don't know. I mean, I just wonder if they can make it work if they're not gonna fill the bird. And that's where I wonder if there's a tag on somewhere in there. Do they see an opportunity maybe in Europe, Mexico City, Europe, somewhere? I mean,
Mexico have ties with it.
I don't know.
And even if they did at this point, would they be able to get make it work?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking of Lufthansa, right? I mean, Lufthansa started Munich, Mexico City, and Frankfurt, Mexico City on a 748. KLM flies a 744 every day. Air France flies a 777 or a 744, depending on what day it is. Heck, maybe we'll see Mexico City, Milan.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Mini hub at Milan.
Mini hub at Milan.
Well, and your point about pushing the 748 into Mexico does raise a good point. That suggests there is some increased premium traffic and increased demand in general that Lufthansa.
Yeah. Yep. And the Munich flight was, it was kind of a random one. I didn't actually expect that one because I figured the Frankfurt flight on a 748 was going to be kind of the max that market could handle. And then they added Munich on a 346, and that one struck me as interesting. So and I think part of that was due to a Mercedes factory or something being built in Mexico City, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Well, so could some of it also be the oil patch, because Munich is a big connection point for the oil patch in the Middle East.
Very true. So maybe Emirates is looking at that and going, "Hey, there's a little bit of market share there," and they just feel like pissing off Lufthansa, which wouldn't be anything new.
Yeah, I would expect that's essentially entirely the purpose of the activity.
So then there was this incident at Las Vegas, and Seth, I think you actually have a picture of it. There was a plane fire caused by a uncontained engine failure on a British Airways 777. And
that was interesting. I was last day, and I was flying in from San Francisco, and happened to land and turn my phone back on because I didn't buy the Wi-Fi for that particular segment. And halfway through the flight, the pilot said something like, folks, we're on our way. We may be a little delayed due to sequencing or something like that. And I was a little surprised because Vegas doesn't strike me as crazy busy as an airport. I mean, it's busy, but they have a whole bunch of runways and they seem to move planes through pretty quickly. And we land, I turn my phone and I start reading. I'm like, British Airways, fire, British Airways, emergency. Just the usual sort of Twitter feed that I would get. And then one of the tweets I see is from the Las Vegas airport. I'm like, wait, Las Vegas? And I turn and look out the window, and directly off the side of our plane is the British Airways aircraft, surrounded by emergency vehicles, and a lot of people milling about. It was just probably 45 or so minutes after the incident happened, so the people had been evacuated and were gone. Everybody was safe. Things had calmed down at that point. But grabbed my camera, got a couple frames off that one of them at least was in focus. But it was quite an interesting few minutes there.
Yeah,
and I didn't, and it was interesting for me, and we didn't really even have any risk.
Well, and what they're saying, or what the initial report is that it was an uncontained engine failure, and it may have severed a fuel line, and that's what caused the fire.
Yeah,
is that kind of the theory? And which is a terrifying idea, because you see some of the initial pictures, and I mean it's a big fire.
Yeah, there's a whole under chunk of the fuselage is completely
melted away. Yeah,
the skin is gone. I mean, there's framework still there, but I have no idea what structural integrity that framework still has, but it's definitely the skin is burned off.
Yeah.
So.
And it's amazing. Everyone got off pretty much uninjured. I think they said they had some injuries in the slide.
Yeah,
the slides.
I was taken to the hospital, but by the next morning they'd all been released.
Which is great news, and a testament to the crew and
the idiots
I listened
bags with them and
those idiots, yeah. And The pilot on air traffic control had to be the most composed pilot I have ever heard during and that's what they're trained to do, is just handle the situation. And
he certainly is, and maybe it's the accent that gives him that air. But I gotta say, like, every one of these incidents I've ever heard, I've never heard a pilot sound panicked.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But no, you hear him call Mayday. You also hear, when you're listening to it, you sort of hear the Delta, I think it was a Delta, or someone was on approach, I think it was Delta, on the parallel runway, and they must have seen it, because while the BA pilot calls something like stopping, air traffic control tries to call the go around, so obviously they saw it before it was even reported. Delta's response is, yeah, we're going, just give us a heading and altitude. Seriously, I mean, seriously, that's basically what he said. Like, yeah, we see it, give us a go around, got it, give us a heading and altitude, because they sort of talked over each other. That was the only plane on final. I guess everybody else was far enough out that the other controllers were able to reroute them. Maybe that's one of them they had to call a go around for, but you hear it. The British Airways pilot calls. He's like, "We're stopped on the runway. We're doing an evac. Send the fire department." The first one is just send when you're requesting fire, and air traffic says, "Yeah, they're already on their way." So obviously they knew and were paying attention and managing it. But it was every time any one of these things happen, A, you're happy that everybody walked away from it okay, and B, incredibly amazed that these people are able to handle. They don't get stuck in the complacency or monotony of just normal operations.
Well, and that's, I like the fire department piece is what kind of I was impressed with, because everyone was saying, oh well, the fire department's really close. Yeah, but 30 seconds. So that means that even though their day-to-day thing is mundane, and they may train every now and then, that they're still on their toes and doing their job, even when it seems like they're just sitting around.
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 minutes to middle of the furthest runway from the station, right?
Yep.
And I mean, they're allowed to drive wherever they want, so that helps. And the trucks can go pretty quickly. But yeah, what's interesting to me is people saying like, "Oh, everything was too slow."
I think it happened.
It was like spectacularly fast.
Yeah.
It was like 4 minutes if you look at the timeline. It's ridiculously fast.
Yeah. And the other interesting bits of it, like, they didn't pop 2L. So obviously, someone looked out the window and saw the fire there and said, "Don't pop that door." They did pop 1L, but no one went down that slide that I could see.
Yep.
So it's like they popped in, whether they saw the fire engine coming in or something else, they realized that was a bad way to go, and they pushed everybody out the back and out the right side. I think they popped 2R, but I don't know if anyone went out that one.
Well, I did in the one video, there are people in front of the left engine as the fire department's coming up, and they're like running to get out of the way, so I don't know where they came from.
Oh, they may have, but a couple people may have come down 1L then. I didn't see that when I was watching it, but...
Yeah, I just noticed it, because I was like, during the Asiana crash, the report was that they had been run over, and so I was watching, and I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible, thinking this happened, but then they were like, oh, no, everyone's fine. But, yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing to see it, and I'm really glad that everyone walked away. I was going to make one last point. It's the point that, Seth, you and I talked about. You blogged a little bit about it. Keeping your stuff on you during the beginning and end of the flights.
Yeah.
There was an author that was on the flight for I think he was the Guardian. Was he an author for the Guardian?
I think so.
Yeah, and he mentioned that he didn't have his shoes on, and he had to put them on very quickly. And I think it's a point that I see a lot of people take their shoes off before the plane's ever left the ground, or put their phone in the seat back pocket. And I'm big on, I keep my phone in my pocket and my shoes on, and my passport on me if I'm international. And I think everyone should be doing the same thing.
Wear Hawaiian shirts. They got nice big pockets for your passport to fit in.
Lastly, why don't you tell us about your tour of the new factory?
Just sort of one little after effect of the BA thing. I was on my way into town for a conference that started on Wednesday morning. A number of the attendees arrived from Europe on that aircraft.
Wow.
So, hard not to want to have a stiff drink after coming in anyways, and you're in Vegas, so why not? But then to find out that, a couple hours later, the aircraft you just committed to flying across the ocean on had a massive uncontained explosion is a bit disconcerting. So there were some interesting conversations around the conference that day, and the having to notify your friends and family, no, not yes, the same aircraft, no, not my flight, kind of thing.
Yep.
So just sort of an interesting, but yeah. So earlier this week, I was down in Mobile, Alabama, which is actually a much nicer city than I expected. Airbus is doing their final assembly line down there for the A320 family. And they threw a bit of a party to sort of celebrate the facility and talk and lobby and, do all those things. I'm still trying to figure out the actual purpose of the event other than just holding a PR bash. But as part of that, I was one of, the group of assembled media who was given somewhat free rein to walk around on the floor of the assembly line and take pictures and explore. And not quite close enough to kick the tires, but almost.
Nice facility?
Really nice. I mean, it's small, so it's only designed currently to scale up to 4 aircraft a month.
Okay.
They say they can go to 8 per month if they need to by adding sort of a second or third shift of employees, but not expanding the building. And if they did go to up to 8, they would have to add a second paint shop, which is outsourced to a different company, and they run it off on the sort of the far side of the apron after you get out of the building. But they can roll a plane through in the goal is by the end of 2017 to be at 4 per month. So there's still a while until they sort of ramp up to that level. But they'll get to that. It's sort of 5 days at each of the 4 stations inside, and after 20-odd days, the plane rolls out and is ready to go. That's right. It's the final assembly. So all the parts essentially arrive on barges, or not barges, cargo ships from Hamburg and elsewhere in Europe generally. Some of the pieces can arrive by airplane as well. They come into the port. They get transferred to trucks. They drive them 3 or 4 miles over to the factory. They transfer them onto a different set of rigs where they can then sort of wheel them in. And so there's it's kind of fun. There's like all the buildings have doors of increasingly larger sizes. So like the entry door on the first building where sort of all the shipping stuff arrives is one size, and then the exit doors on it are a little bigger, and then the entry doors to the next building are that same little bigger, and then the exit door on the main building is even bigger because then it's a full airplane coming out. And then the exit door and entry door on the other sort of the finishing touches hangar is even bigger because they can park multiple planes next to each other while they're working on them, and then they sort of pull them across the road or across the apron to the delivery center where they're then obviously the keys are handed over and cash is paid and they fly off on their delivery flights.
So it's like a Russian doll factory.
Yeah, it's really neat like that to sort of see the doors growing and whatnot. But it's it's amazing to me every time. You'd think I'd get bored of it or it would become old hat or you'd sort of be like, yeah, okay, so it's an airplane. But no, every time I find it completely amazing to sort of walk through and see the planes being put together and all the different bits that go into it.
Do you know what the production rate in Hamburg is?
Much higher.
Thank you.
No, I don't know the specific number. I think by now I would have looked it up. But I don't know. Like just the scale of some of the stuff really does amaze me. They talk about 1,200 rivets per wing to hold it onto the main body. The fuselage join is 3,000 rivets, each one to 0.04 millimeter tolerance.
Wow. Which
is a very small number of inches.
Yeah.
I tried to do the conversion in my head while we were talking to the guy, and I stopped trying because it was an epic failure. But I know the 0.04 millimeters is very small. So.
Did you have a chance to visit the USS Alabama and USS Drome?
I did not. I had the only real touristy time I had was Sunday night for dinner. I was able to get at. Actually, I had Sunday brunch and Sunday dinner. Sunday brunch, we went to Winsel's, which is sort of the oldest restaurant in town, and their slogan is "We got all your oysters," and it's fried, stewed, or nude, and I'm not sure, something of that nature. We had probably the best shrimp and grits I've ever had there. There were fried crab claws, which were good, but mostly just tasted like fried, not enough crab meat on them for my taste. I had a dozen raw oysters that were spectacular, not surprisingly. And there's something else we had that was pretty good. But the shrimp and grits at Winsel's was definitely a win. And then that night we went to the Loda Beer Garden, which has hundreds of beers on tap from all over the world. I thought they were going to be bottles, but then I went inside to go to the bathroom and realized they were all on tap, so that was pretty incredible. A lot of local stuff, but also sort of completely all over the world. They did beer flights and whiskey or bourbon flights. Mm-hmm. So if brown liquor is your thing, they've got a lot of options for you there as well. And my hamburger, which I don't remember the name of it now, but it was all their hamburgers were sort of, fresh beef, whatever, really good quality stuff, half pound, super thick patty. Mine was cheddar bacon, drizzled with barbecue sauce and served on local glazed donut. And maybe I'll get a picture of it in the show notes. It was spectacular.
Sounds good.
I may have lost a week out of my life with the, putting that into my body, but it's going to be the worst week anyways. Is my it was or something like that. It was so good.
Oh, well, it sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, I can't figure out why they actually held the event other than just to sort of like, hey, we've got a factory here. Pay attention to us. Talking to some of the people, it seems like the date was planned months in advance, so it wasn't a quick response to Boeing talking about China or anything else, best I can tell, which Boeing is apparently talking possibly later next week. The president of China is coming to visit, or premier, or someone's coming to visit, so there may be talks about assembly there, but...
Interesting.
I can't imagine Boeing would want to do that, but sure, go for it. yeah, it's an interesting situation. So definitely cool to have, that sort of level of involvement and seeing another manufacturing facility come online. Those are the sort of jobs that people want, and especially in that region, manufacturing is a big part of the economy down there. So to get a few hundred direct jobs and the expected few thousand incidental jobs that come with it will be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that wraps up episode 91.
Sweet.
Well, I've got one question. Did Mobile have more activity on the floor than Toulouse?
Well, the Sunday we were there had nobody working.
Okay.
No, so because it's still very much in testing right now, or in sort of ramp up, there was no assembly going on while we were there.
Okay.
I don't think everybody was taking breaks and drinking wine like I presume they all do in Toulouse, but actually, sort of interesting fact that I've sort of forgotten about, but I think is interesting here. The certification for the factory is handled by EASA, not the FAA. Even though it's in the United States, all of it is managed by the European agency.
Interesting.
The flights will carry a F- registration when they fly for the test flights before delivery. It's all run as though it is in Europe.
I wonder why.
What they basically explained is that there's a bilateral deal between the two, so they are allowed to, and if they had to switch it to the FAA rules, it would change the manufacturing process enough that it would be too challenging to do it. It wouldn't be worth it. But because of that sort of reciprocity deal, they're allowed to they can make it work.
Cool.
Yeah. So I thought that was one of the more interesting facts, that and the 1,200 rivets per wing. But yeah, none of it's even though the test pilots are American, they hired them locally. But other than that, it's basically an entirely European process.
Interesting.
So.
Well, let's go around the table and tell everybody where they can find you. Foz?
On Twitter as Fozette.
Seth?
And I am Seth Miller, also known as the Wandering Airman. I'm at WANDRME.
And I'm Steven Seagraves. You can find me on Twitter at SSeagraves or on badice.com. You can follow Dots, Lines, and Destinations on Twitter at DotsLines. And, or leave us a comment or something on the website, moredotsmorelines.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next show.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.